Welcome to the Economy Magazine at I-24 News, where we provide a daily view on world markets and the global economy. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Coming up today, an unprecedented meeting of the minds takes place in Israel's World Science Conference. And Dilma Rousef's popularity sinks on growing anti-government sentiment in Brazil. Let's start now with the headlines. Well, the minutes from the Fed's July policy meeting sent stocks into panic on Wednesday, following a ream of unpleasant economic data from China and growing signs of global weakness. Fed officials appear to be uncertain about hiking rates in September, as originally expected. Well, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 162.61 points, or 0.9%, to 17,348.73. The S&P 500 declined 17.31 points, or 0.8%, to 2,079.61. And the Nasdaq Composite lost 40.30 points, or 0.8%, to 5,019.05. Well, Asian shares continued their downward spiral on Thursday as well, following the Fed's cloudy vision on rates. Also weighing on Asian markets, the IMF signaling that it won't add the Chinese yuan to its basket of reserve currencies for at least a year. This follows Beijing's aggressive devaluation of the yuan in order to combat falling exports over the summer. The Shanghai Composite fell 3.4% to 3,664.29. And the smaller Shenzhen Composite ended 3% lower at 2,155.49. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index went down 1.9%.
In the past 2 months, the Chinese government showed to the world their incompetence dealing with the stock market, and then the exchange market, and also the economy. So nothing is working right for China. And if China is not working right, then Hong Kong will suffer, and this is exactly what happened. And the stock market just fell across the board.
Meanwhile, in Europe, stock markets there fell at the open Thursday, reacting to problems in China, the Fed outlook on rates, and also Greece's debt struggles. Well, Greece reportedly made a €3.2 billion payment to the European Central Bank on a maturing government bond on Thursday. A senior European official told Reuters that Athens had tapped cash from its first round of bailout money, the grand total reaching €86 billion in this latest deal. A good amount of that first portion of rescue funds, some €13 billion, will be used to pay off Greece's debt. Well, in earnings news, grocery chain operator Ahold reported solid growth in both sales and profit in its second quarter on Thursday. The chain pointed to improving economies in the U.S. and the Netherlands. Net profit rose 33% from the same quarter a year earlier to €195 million, while sales rose 17% to €8.69 billion. Now, those figures largely met the analysts' expectations. In June, the operator announced it would merge with Belgian rival Delhaize, creating one of the largest food retailers in the U.S. and a major player in Europe. And consumer prices increased for a sixth straight month in the U.S. Despite relief at the gas pump due to a glut of global oil supply, rising housing costs sent inflation higher. The U.S. Labor Department said the Consumer Price Index, reflecting what Americans pay for just about everything, rose a seasonally adjusted 0.1% in July from the month earlier. Though prices are up a very mild 0.2% from a year before, the gain in the core index came in at a solid 1.8%. Also limiting consumers' pocket power is a slow rise in hourly wages, up just 1.9% from the year earlier. Well, delegations from over 70 countries attended Israel's World Science Conference this year, and our reporter, Shelby Weiner, had the opportunity to see it for herself.
An international collaboration of top scientific thinkers, the World Science Conference Israel brought together students, scholars, and Nobel Prize laureates from over 70 countries. An unprecedented meeting of the minds.
This is the first ever conference, science conference, taking place in that magnitude and that size ever.
The conference was hosted at Jerusalem's Hebrew University, and organizers boast the location is key in building the scientific atmosphere. Israel has more Nobel Prize laureates per capita than any other country.
Israel is so good in all the latest development, in all the latest breakthroughs, in science, in physics, in chemistry, in math.
But IQ isn't the only thing that makes Israel intellectually dense. The small country is a major powerhouse for introducing technology into the business sector, hosting the largest concentration of startups per capita as well.
In Israel, we have a perfect example of a connection between science, engineering, technology, and entrepreneurship. There's a straight line between the innovation in university, the innovation of startups.
And that straight line is internationally recognized. A survey on venture capital confidence ranked Israel at number 2. Investors gave only the U.S. a higher reassurance rating on investment, a notable achievement for an economy 300 times smaller than America. And delegations come from around the globe trying to pinpoint Israel's success at streamlining the science, tech, and business spheres.
How do they actually turn that science into companies that thrive and go out and are acquired for billions of dollars? That's what's happening. You know, $15 billion in acquisitions or investments in startups in Israel in 2014. That's huge money.
It may be due to government investment into research and development, almost 5% of its GDP, higher than any other country in the world. But the answers are evolving as the technology field is rapidly growing. The eyes of the world are tuned in to the scientific community, and only time will tell how technology and business are impacted by the field. I'm Shelby Weiner at the World Science Conference Israel for I-24 News.
On set, we have Shelby Weiner for further insight. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, who organized this conference?
The conference was actually organized and paid for by the Israeli government. So it's really interesting to look at because they invited students, scientists, all from around the world to come, but then also media from each one of these countries. So it's kind of playing into possibly part of Israel's self-advocacy campaign. Is it really about the science, or is it about a positive image for Israel?
Well, that is an interesting point that you make. What stood out to you?
Something that I thought was pretty interesting, and I heard from one of the other delegates, was that this is the first year that Israel had the conference, but they tried to last year and ended up canceling last minute because of the war. So it's something really new happening in this country.
Well, thank you very much for being with us today and filing that report. Moving on now to the rest of our coverage. Unrest in Brazil. Hundreds of thousands of people protesting against the government. President Dilma Rousef's popularity tanking. Here's more from Shelby Weiner.
Dilma Rousef is in turmoil, scraping the bottom of the opinion polls with a record low approval rating at a mere 8%. The president of Brazil has been highly criticized. On Sunday, hundreds of thousands protested across the country, calling for impeachment and the removal of her left-wing Workers' Party.
We are going through a very difficult time with Brazilian politics. This government has no credibility. It is destroying the country. This corruption is very sad, and I think President Rousef is a part of all of this.
No charges have been brought yet, but it's difficult for the president not to be splashed by the Petrobras scandal. She was chair of the oil giant from 2003 to 2010, and several big names in her government have been accused of high-level corruption, leaving the population with doubts of her innocence, especially in times of recession. 2015 is down 1.8%, according to the latest estimates.
The people want good government because nobody can withstand the way it is. All the social classes are suffering in this country.
There is a lack of attention to education, to health, and there is all this bureaucracy that makes us suffer. And then there's all this unemployment.
Unemployment, which continues to rise, 2.6 in just 6 months, and inflation reached almost 9% in a year. Household consumption is plummeting in South America's largest economy, yet the finance minister attempts to reassure the public.
We are seeing a recuperation in foreign investment, which had been weakening for some time. This is because of the relative prices against the dollar, which has become more attractive to invest in Brazil once again. We are seeing more investment in real estate, in companies, and this recuperation is absolutely fundamental for our getting back on track.
But the return on investment is not sustainable without political stability, especially as Brazil, a large exporter, accumulated a trade deficit of almost $4 billion in 2014.
As debate continues over the nuclear agreement with Iran and the U.S. Congress considers whether to support or reject this deal, the potential positive impact of the deal for Israel and its Arab neighbors is widely ignored. Here today to speak with us about the economic and political breakthroughs of this Iran deal, could have between Israel and the Arab states is Tal Hanan, CEO of Clarity Capital. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you've posited that this deal could actually be good for peace between the Israelis and Palestinians.
Well, I think there are scenarios. Without kind of staying with this is net good or net bad, let's focus on what is, and then what can we do to go forward. And the fact is, despite the fact that Israel seems to have been leading the charge against this deal, it has a lot of other opponents in the region, particularly the Arab states in the Gulf. So to the extent that there's a Sunni-Shiite divide emerging in the Muslim world, we have the opportunity, I think, to rethink the way the entire Middle East is aligned. By the way, the deal is only facilitated. I think this has actually been on the table for quite a while, since 2002.
So do you think this deal actually moves Israel closer to achieving this initiative?
I think it moves the Sunni Arab countries closer, and it's up to the Israeli leadership to decide whether to respond. But remember, there's been a Saudi peace proposal on the table since 2002, which has been reiterated multiple times without a real Israeli official reaction to this day. I would argue that the urgency with which that appeal is being voiced in the Arab world today has gone up significantly since this deal was announced.
Fascinating. So it should be interesting to see whether or not we hear any other rumblings on that peace initiative.
Yeah, I would argue that the next rumbling would have to be on our side. We've had as many rumblings as we'll probably get from the Arab side.
All right. Well, let's speak about the economies, both Israel's and future Palestinian state. What would the impact be of a deal, a peace deal?
Well, I said there's a primary impact in energy prices. So we all will benefit, all of the net importers of energy, which Israel still is, despite the gas fines, will be direct beneficiaries of that. And that's obviously not just a regional phenomenon, but it is relevant certainly for Israel, for Jordan, for Egypt. Obviously not for the net exporters of energy like Saudi Arabia and some of the Gulf countries. If this could be exploited to achieve a comprehensive peace deal, which I think today sounds extremely ambitious, but I'm not sure it needs to be. I think the potential for joint projects in the region is tremendous. Remember, you have a region that has barely grown in real GDP terms, ex-energy, in a generation.
What kind of projects could we see here?
Well, so I think tourism might head the list. Again, if we could achieve some sort of stability in the region, remember this is the seat of the three great monotheistic religions, and Israel in itself is at the hub of that, and we get less tourism here than the city of Berlin in a year, which is a shame, and that could be I think significantly enhanced by stability in the region and by some sort of cross-border cooperation. If you wanted to get more ambitious, think of the water projects. We have some of the biggest elevation disparities in sea levels in the world, which has great hydroelectric potential. This is not new. I mean, there are projects that have been on paper for decades now, but that require regional cooperation, certainly between Israel and Jordan at the very least, to implement. There are solar power projects. The fact that we have gas now in the region, a cheap source of gas, certainly in the Fertile Crescent, opens up all sorts of interesting agricultural opportunities. If you're going to be desalinating water at cheap prices, at great volumes, I mean, there's so much that could be done to turn this region into a breadbasket. Again, these things sound very, very ambitious from today's standpoint. Remember, this is a very, very quickly evolving region, and things can go.
Well, Israel is already planning to sell its gas to both Jordan and Egypt, but potentially, if a deal is made, perhaps Lebanon or Saudi could get on board here as well.
Yeah, I think so. And again, think of the vast expanses of what is today barren land in this entire region. They're huge. The massive hydroelectric, gas, and solar power potential, wed with the fact that we have massive access to salt water, which, if desalinated, could really turn this region into a breadbasket. That is possible. That's all doable. The only thing in the way is politics at this point.
Interesting. So this Iran deal is expected to eventually decrease the price of oil further. How do you think that's going to impact a potential peace deal between Israel and the Sunni states?
Well, so I think it's one factor that is putting pressure on oil prices. It's not the only one. If you think about it, global demand growth has been waning in the last years. We are still in a very gradual global recovery from recession, and it's tenuous. And we might find ourselves in the next global recession before we fully recover from the last one. So there is a demand component here. There's also a big supply component, is in that you have an OPEC, which has been dysfunctional for a long time and not really operating as the cartel that it used to be. So Iran coming on with, let's say, up to an additional 1 million barrels of oil a day, is a significant factor, but it's not the only factor. But I would say that would put even more pressure on our kind of Sunni neighbors to try to achieve some sort of a deal that gives them economic diversification, not just oil.
Certainly, it will be a fascinating time to see if either party, the Sunni states or Israel, takes advantage of this unique opportunity. Thank you so much for joining us, Tal Hanan, the CEO of Clarity Capital. Very much appreciate it. Well, that wraps up our show today. Stay tuned every day from the Jaffa Port in Tel Aviv. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Thank you very much for watching, and also be sure to follow us on our website. It's i24news.tv.